So it says, قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله به بعلمه وبعلمكم آمين. حدثنا إبراهيم بن موسى قال أخبرني يحيى بن زكريا بن أبي زائدة عن زكريا عن أبي إسحاق عن محمد بن سعد بن مالك عن أبيه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال سباب المسلم فسوق. And this is narrated by Nasa'i and others. Okay, go ahead, Bismillah.
429.
429, yeah.
Sa'ad ibn Malik reported that the Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, said, "Relieving a Muslim is a deviant behavior."
It's fusuq. Fusuq is a very heavy word. It means something that ruptures behavior, very vile and bad and low behavior. Okay, next one then is حدثنا محمد بن سنان قال أخبرنا فليح بن سليمان قال حدثنا هلال بن علي عن أنس قال لم يكن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فاحشا ولا لعانا ولا سبابا وكان يقول عند المعتبة معتبة I believe with a كسر الله أعلم ما له ترب جبينه. Right, go ahead.
Anas said, "The Messenger of Allah."
Go ahead.
To say when he wanted to censure someone, "What is wrong with him? May his brow be dusty."
May his brow become dusty. Yeah, may his brow. Please tell me if you can't hear me. I changed my internet connection, and I think it should be stronger now, but I'm not sure. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ would neither use coarse word, so he wasn't coarse, so the words he wouldn't use, they weren't harsh, okay? So the words here, what does it use in the Arabic? It says, he wasn't fahish, which is coarse or rude. So he wouldn't use vile language. Wala la'an, nor would he curse people, right? Nor would he say, may Allah curse so-and-so, may Allah send him to hell, right? Wala sabbaban, and he wouldn't insult people, right? So he would say, for example, what's his problem? What's wrong with him? May his brow become dusty, right? So there are phrases like that. We will see certain things, but the point is he would use very, very light terms of, of blame, things like that, right? May his brow become dusty. That's not very heavy, right? He wouldn't use heavy words. Okay, 431. حدثنا سليمان بن حرب قال حدثنا شعبة عن زبيد قال سمعت أبا وائل عن عبد الله عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال سباب المسلم فسوق وقتاله كفر. And this is in Sahih Bukhari. Same hadith, but basically it's in Bukhari. Okay, go ahead.
Abdullah reported that the Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, said, "Revealing a Muslim is deviant behavior, and killing him is disbelief."
Good. Reviling. So Muhammad, Mustafa, or anybody else, when we say Abdullah, who do we mean? So there's four famous Abdullahs. So when we say Abdullah, who do we mean?
Abdullah ibn Mas'ud.
Excellent. Very good. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So he is the elder of them and the most famous of them, right? And the great faqih and the founder of the Hanafi school, right? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, right? Then we have Abdullah, so Azhar, who else do we have? And Mahir. Who are
Ibn Umar,
Abdullah ibn Umar, yes, that's not.
Ibn Abbas,
Abdullah ibn Abbas, yeah.
Abdullah ibn Amr bin As.
Ibn As, right? And there are obviously other Abdullahs among Sahaba, but these are called the Abadila, right? The four Abdullahs. Great. Okay. Next hadith. حدثنا أبو معمر قال حدثنا عبد الوارث عن الحسين عن عبد الله بن بريدة قال حدثنا يحيى بن يعمر أن أبا الأسود الدؤلي حدثه أنه سمع أبا ذر قال سمعت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لا يرمي رجلا بالفسوق ولا يرميه بالكفر إلا ارتدت عليه إن لم يكن صاحبه كذلك. Go ahead, Mustafa.
Abu Dawud is reported as saying that he heard the Prophet, may Allah bless him, grant him peace, say, if a man accuses another man of deviance or accuses him of disbelief, that accusation will come back on him if his companion is not as he said.
So fasiq, you're an irreligious, overtly, intentionally sinful person, or you're a kafir, that comes back to you, right? Now, there are some issues. There are some issues where it's not, you're not trying to lie about somebody, you're just trying to label something, and there could be difference of agreement on that issue, right? So, for example, there's difference of agreement among the ulama. Was Ibn Sina a believer or not? Right? So he said certain things, and he phrased certain things in certain philosophical way that certain people labeled him as a kafir and others didn't, right? So that's not what we're talking about. That's an academic point. And for example, someone like Imam Ghazali said, listen, he said this, this, and this. I understand what he's saying. I understand and this is actually kufr, right? This person's actually a disbeliever. So that's not what we're talking about, right? So when there's a sound scholarly debate, is this technically disbelief or not? As opposed to you throwing around these words, right? Throwing these words around in a non-academic way. That's what we're talking about. Okay, next hadith, 433. وبالسند, the same chain of transmission, عن أبي ذر سمع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من ادعى لغير أبيه وهو يعلم فقد كفر ومن ادعى قوما ليس هو منهم فليتبوأ مقعده من النار ومن دعا رجلا بالكفر أو قال عدو الله وليس كذلك إلا حارت عليه.
Abdullah reported, Abu Dawud stated that he heard the Prophet, may Allah bless and grant him peace, say, a person who has knowingly claims a father one other than his own has disbelieved. A person who claims to be from a people when he is not one of them will take his place in the fire. A person who calls a man an unbeliever, says enemy of Allah, when that is not the case, will have that come back on him.
So these are also, my apologies, I'm next to a freeway. I guess some people really like loud motorbikes. Everything's happening this morning. Loud motorbikes. Now I guess an ambulance or police. Allahu alam. So the first one, is it actual kufr then? Right? So somebody who says, this is my father, but they're not. Right? So they fake a lineage. Right? So notice the difference between, so when he says disbelief, as you know, Imam Bukhari has a title. One of his titles is Kufrun duna kufr, right? Disbelief that is less than disbelief, right? I.e., the Prophet ﷺ is using the word kafara in its linguistic sense, not in its technical sense that we use, right? Kafara, right, means to not appreciate something or to cover up something, right? So the Prophet mentioned about, for example, about women, it says yakfurna al-ashir, that they don't appreciate their husbands or they don't appreciate the people they live with. Yakfurna al-ashir. That's not kufr, is it? Right? That's not the actual disbelief. We say the kuffar, and the word kuffar comes in the Quran to mean farmers because they cover up the truth. I believe it's Imra al-Qais, or one of a Jahili poem talks about the night in which the clouds did kafara of the stars, meaning they covered it up, right? So this person who makes this claim, oh, I'm the son of so and so, right? This is a huge rupture of society, and it's very bad, all right? And so obviously, making any lie would be wrong, and ascribing lineage to anybody would be wrong, even to a woman, but particularly to a man because of the patriarchy. Okay, so there's something that we see time and time again is there's a structure in Islam and structure in Islamic society which is called patriarchy, where there's the man and his children and the patriarchic system that he's part of, right? His brothers and his connection to his father and grandfather, etc. So that's a structure of society, patriarchy. Okay, and so here this person not only is lying, not only is trying to get a right that wouldn't be his right. Maybe his mother, this mother, for example, that he claims, oh, I'm the son of so and so, right? But the issue is that you are rupturing this key system that Allah has invested in, which is patriarchy, right? And you're claiming this is so and so is my father, and they're not your father, and you cannot do that. So this person is like, it is as if they have disbelieved and they're doing something very, 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 very bad, right? Okay. And this is one of the reasons as well, something that was discussed in the class Defemina that's now over, is why is it that we're so protective of women and more than men, right? So why are we so protective of women? Because women can bring somebody into a patriarchic system, whereas a man could not do that, right? So a man, for example, a man does something haram and inappropriate. A woman does something haram and inappropriate. Yes, that's true. They're both sinful. But if a woman does that, she can bring a child into a system that's not part of that system. So she's married and she commits zina, may Allah protect us, and she brings a child into that structure. So now she is bringing a child there, and it's not, and now you've broken that system, whereas a man couldn't do that. A man's not capable of doing that. So this is one of the reasons why we're very protective of women, and many of the rules to do with women are very conservative, and because she can rupture the system in a way that a man couldn't. And similarly here, a person who claims to be from a people, but he's not of those people, right? The same concept. Oh, I'm of this tribe. So either on the micro patriarchic system, I am the son of so and so, or I'm of this tribe. You're not of that tribe though, right? So the tribe is important in Islam. If it wasn't, the Prophet said it doesn't matter which tribe you're from. But it does matter. Your lineage is important and your tribe is important. And that is a default structure in Islam is the patriarchic tribe, right? And a person who calls a man an unbeliever, even though he's not, right? When that is not the case, will have that come back at him. So someone falsely claims lineage, correct? Yeah. Right. But you could do that to a woman, do it to a man and say, I'm the son of this woman, right? That's bad. You're lying, and that's bad. You could be claiming, for example, rights. You could be doing all sorts of things. But the Prophet is specifically mentioning this because you're rupturing this very important structure. You're breaking that very important structure. Okay. 4, 3, 4. One second. Okay. 4, 3, 4. حدثنا عمر قال حدثنا أبي قال حدثنا الأعمش قال حدثنا عدي بن ثابت. So this hadith gives us, I always like to mention some of these hadith things to help us a picture, right? So Imam Bukhari is saying, my teacher, whose name was Umar, right? We can find his full name very easily, narrates from his father, who narrates from al-A'mash. Who is al-A'mash? This is one of the students of Imam Abu Hanifa. Right, so if you look at the timeline between Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Bukhari, it's a huge gap, right? Imam Abu Hanifa passes away in 150. Okay? Imam Bukhari passes away in 251, I believe, or 254. So Imam Bukhari passes away over 100 years after Imam Abu Hanifa. So the gap is huge, right? So Imam Bukhari is studying with the great student of Imam Abu Hanifa, right? That's number one. Number two, al-A'mash, he is this great hadith narrator and great qari of Kufa. But notice, even though he knows more hadith than Imam Abu Hanifa, he is a student of Imam Abu Hanifa. Okay, why would that be the case? Where's Mahir? Mahir's left. Azhar or Adib. Why would that be the case? Why would you study from somebody who, even though you know more hadith than them? Who has more information, us or ChatGPT? Who has actual more information, raw data? Because he compiled, not quite, no. So what's the difference between raw data and a question that you ask ChatGPT about that raw data? Or raw data and a PhD paper written on that raw data? Is there a difference?
There's no analysis of that data.
Exactly. So fiqh is the analysis of the data. Hadith is the data itself. So I have all these hadiths. Okay, which of them are sound, which of them are weak? What do they mean? How do I put them together? Which one is qualifying which? How does it all come together? How does it apply in this scenario? I don't know. So you could be studying with somebody who has a better processing power than you, even though you have more data than him. Right? So a faqih like Imam Malik, like Imam Abu Hanifa, is a faqih because of his processing power, his ability to process information, right? And translate that into this. Given this data, what is the answer to this problem? Most people can't do that, right? Most people can't do that, right? And so that's actually very hard. Here is this information. How are you going to process it? What are the principles you're going to get from it? And then what are the conclusions? And then how does that conclusion apply to this scenario? Right? So there's a big difference between having data, that's the role of the muhaddith, and analyzing it. And in reality, the muhaddith, he does analyze data, but he analyzes data in another way. So the data, for example, that the muhaddith, so you could be a muhaddith, just a narrator. I just have information, right? So-and-so narrates from me, from so-and-so, from so-and-so, and so-and-so. I narrate. These are this is just raw information. You could just have raw information, in which case you're not really a scholar, but you are a data collector, which is a good, right? You've obviously collected a lot of data, which is fantastic. But right, and this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, may Allah make radiant the face of he who hears my words and then hears and memorizes it and conveys it to the other person, because it may well be that the person who hears it has a better processing power, has more fiqh than the person who listens to it first. Right? So Al-A'mash, that's his relationship with Imam Abu Hanifa. I know more data, you know how to analyze it. Right? As in one quote says, نحن الصيادلة وأنتم الأطباء. We are just the pharmacists, but you're the doctors. Right? So there's some happens that sometimes the pharmacist will know more certain information than the doctor, right? And will actually have to intervene. But the doctor is the big cheese. He's the guy who is putting the whole show together, right? Whereas the pharmacist is on a lower level. And so that's a somewhat of a hyperbole, because the real hadith scholar is doing something else. He's actually processing the information in terms of accuracy, right? But he's not processing the information in terms of what can be inferred from it, right? So it's a bit like this. It's a bit like, imagine if somebody, I have an AI app, okay, and its job is to look at 10,000 scans of passports and find out which ones are fake. Okay, so that's one thing. That's what hadith scholar does. So when you say processing, he does process. He has all of this information. He's collected hadith from all of these different cities, with all of these different narrators, and he starts comparing the information. He realizes mistake, so and so mistake here. This well, he can see things, systems. He sees that this person flipped a hadith, so he is analyzing, but he's not analyzing as a faqih would analyze. A faqih analyzes to say, what does that mean in respect to Bitcoin? What does that mean in respect to this divorce situation? So the muhaddith is analyzing. He's looking at all the data and comparing it and sifting through it and saying, there's a mistake here. This person changed this. This person did this. You're looking at all the data and finding out, sifting through it. Just like if you had an app that could identify which photos, which pictures are not actually accurate, right? Looks at them and says, this is not accurate. As opposed to the judge who's now going to say, okay, given this photo, this picture of a passport is fake. Given this, given all of these things, I'm now sentencing this person to this much time in jail. Right? So the role of the judge is very, very different to the role of the app. Right? So that's what someone like Imam Bukhari does. Imam Bukhari is a faqih, but his main job is to look at thousands and thousands and thousands of hadiths and find out errors and inconsistencies and find out what's going on, right? Where did the error happen, right? It's called ilal. So they are analyzing, but it's just a total different analysis, right? So somebody who says, I just follow hadith, I'm doing hadith. Hadith and fiqh are not the same science to begin with. That's like saying recording, right? And analyzing, they're not the same, right? So you might have a recording studio, and so somebody records on their phone is not very good, and they have a recording studio where it was recorded properly, and you did an audio book that sounds nice, and it has background sounds and this and that, it sounds really good. That's one science, as opposed to what does the audio book talk about, and how relevant is it to a grade 6 student? Totally different analysis. So somebody says, I just follow hadith, that's not a thing. It's not a thing you can follow, because you need to analyze it in respect to its practical repercussions. What does that mean now? That's the role of the faqih, right? That's not the role of the muhaddith. Muhaddith either does mere narration, or he does narration with analysis of errors and inconsistencies. That's his job, right? But that's not a madhab. You say, what madhab are you? I follow the muhaddithin. That's not a school of fiqh. That's not a system, right? That's like saying which team do you play for? Oh, the good one. That's not a team, right? It's not a system. Okay, so if we give that side point there. Okay, so he says حدثنا عدي بن ثابت قال سمعت سليمان بن صرد رجلا من أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال استب رجلان عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فغضب أحدهما فاشتد غضبه حتى انتفخ وجهه وتغير فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إني لأعلم كلمة لو قالها لذهب عنه الذي يجد فانطلق إليه الرجل فأخبره بقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وقال تعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قال أترى بي بأسا أمجنون أنا اذهب. Go ahead, Mustafa. This is 434.
Sulaiman ibn Surad, one of the companions of the Prophet, said, two men reviled one another in the presence of the Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, and one of them became angry. He became so angry that his face puffed out and changed color. The Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, said, I know some words which will make what he feels depart if he says them. The man came to him and told him what the Prophet, may Allah bless and grant him peace, had said. He said, seek refuge with Allah from the accursed shaitan. He said, do you think that there is something wrong with me? Am I mad?
So am I majnoon, right? What does majnoon mean? Majnoon is from the word jinn, right? So basically the man came to him. So one of the other Sahaba heard what the Prophet ﷺ said, and he said, oh, the Prophet ﷺ just advised you, say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Say, I seek protection from the accursed devil. He's like, so the guy was so angry and arrogant that he said, what? He said, is there something wrong with me? Do you think I'm insane? Do you think I'm being afflicted by the devil? Right? Why would I seek protection from the devil? I'm not insane. I'm not majnoon. I haven't been touched by jinn. Right? Leave me alone. Right? So he didn't take the advice. May Allah protect us. Right? So the shaitan, that's what happens, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the shaitan flows flows inside a human just like the blood flows. So your emotions, right? He has an emotion and he turns it to the side, right? Turns it away to something. So your anger So the sense of justice, and he turns it into anger and etc. All of these things, right? So the shaitan is there trying to make us angry. So what should we do if you're angry? You sit down. If you sit down, if you're sitting down, you lie down. You make wudu. You say "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim," right? Back out of the situation and come back later, right? And half the time we realize there was no issue anyway. Okay. And then it says, Abdullah said, the next hadith, حدثنا خلاد بن يحيى, this is 353, 453, sorry. حدثنا خلاد بن يحيى قال حدثنا سفيان عن يزيد بن أبي زياد عن عمرو بن سلمة عن عبد الله قال ما من مسلم إلا بينهما من الله ستر فإذا قال أحدهما لصاحبه كلمة هجر فقد خرق ستر الله وإذا قال أحدهما للآخر أنت كافر فقد كفر أحدهما. Go ahead, Bismillah.
Abdullah said there is a veil from Allah Almighty between every two Muslims. When one of them says ugly words to his companion, he has rent the veil of Allah. When one of them tells the other, you are an unbeliever, then one of them has disbelieved.
So, as the Prophet said, لا تغضب, لا تغضب, لا تغضب, don't get angry. Right? And if you're angry, go away somewhere. You can't always control your emotions, but you can say, I'm extremely angry right now. I need time. And the person keeps going, back off because you're going to say or do something very, very stupid. So you shouldn't. Right? So you have to know an important attribute of being strong is knowing what your weaknesses are. Right? What are you not good at? Right? That's an important thing. Right? A T-Rex, did he have big arms? No, very small arms, right? So that was right, the king of the dinosaurs or whatever it was. It's very small arms. Crocodiles, I think they're very very good at biting, but they're not very good at opening their mouths. Right? I don't know. Everything. So knowing your weaknesses, what am I not good at? Right? What can I not deal with? Right? It's very important to understand those things. And understand that a lot of emotions are fake, right? They're not real. Like there's just like this background music in your head, and you realize, yeah, it's just whatever. It's not a big deal. We're all going to be dead very soon, so it's probably not worth it. Right? Okay. Okay, no, 436. Bismillah. 436, he says, حدثنا عمر بن حفص قال حدثنا أبي قال حدثنا الأعمش قال حدثنا مسلم عن مسروق قالت عائشة صنع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم شيئا فرخص فيه فتنزه عنه قوم فبلغ ذلك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فخطب فحمد الله ثم قال ما بال أقوام يتنزهون عن الشيء أصنعه فوالله إني لأعلمهم بالله وأشدهم له خشية. Right? So here it doesn't mention the whole story, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, go ahead, Mustafa, if you can read.
Aisha said the Prophet, may Allah bless and grant him peace, did something that and thereby created a dispensation for doing it. Some people still refrain from doing. The Prophet, may Allah bless and grant him peace, heard about that and he gave a speech and praised Allah. Then he said, what is wrong with those people who restrain themselves from doing which I do, from doing something which I do? By Allah, I know Allah better than they do, and I fear him more than they do.
Right? So the issue is here is the Prophet clearly made something halal that they were used to knowing as bad and immoral. And they're like, no, this is fine. The Prophet did it. And then they still didn't want to do it. right? They said, no, 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 maybe the Prophet just, doing that because he's a prophet, maybe this, maybe that. Maybe we're more religious than the Prophet ﷺ, right? So the Prophet ﷺ blamed them and told them off, but he didn't say their names, right? So general principle, when you want to praise somebody, say their name. When you want to blame somebody, don't say their name. Okay? When you speak nicely to somebody, say their name because people like to hear their name, right? It's a nice way to say things. Whereas when you're going to blame somebody, what did he do? He did it very indirectly. He said, what's wrong with some people? They all know who he's talking about, but he didn't say their name. Who restrain themselves from doing something that which I do. By Allah, I know Allah better than they do. I know the rules, and I fear Him more than they do. I'm taking more precautions than they are, right? I'm taking more precautions than they are. So don't be like, oh, we're not going to do that because the Prophet did it. Now, is it true then that every single thing the Prophet did, we should do? Right? So is it true that we can say that if the Prophet did it, we should do it? Is that in an absolute sense, is that true? In an absolute sense. So we should all move to Medina and Mecca. We should all live in an adobe house. No, it's not true. So the point is, here the Prophet ﷺ, there was something that people wanted to do, and they stopped doing it because they thought it was haram, or perhaps it was previously haram. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, you want to do this thing, go ahead, it's totally halal. Here I am doing it, right? As opposed to what the Prophet ﷺ did in his capacity as a human being. The Prophet ﷺ lived in a place. Well, you have to live in a place. The Prophet ﷺ wore clothes. Well, the clothes have to be made out of something. So sometimes many things are just coincidence. Like that's just the type of clothes that they had at that time. That's just the kind of vehicles they had at that time. So you're not going to say it is bid'ah to drive a car, right? And it's sunnah to ride a camel. It is not sunnah to ride a camel, right? Well, the Prophet ﷺ did it, so yeah. But that doesn't make it recommended for me, right? So what it means is, number one, some things are of the khasa'is of the Prophet ﷺ, some things are unique to the Prophet ﷺ, which is the exception. Other things, when the Prophet ﷺ does something, it tells us one of four things, if I remember correctly, one of four things, one of five things. He did it and it's wajib, right? Who can think of something the Prophet ﷺ did and it is obligatory for us to do? So the Prophet ﷺ did it and we have to do it. Salah, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli, pray as you see me pray. So the Prophet ﷺ prayed and he put his head on the floor and he did sujood, etc. So we have to do that. We can't do something else. Okay? Hajj, okay? Various different things like that. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ did something and it's obligatory for us to do it. He did something and it's sunnah for us to do it. Like what? All ibadah. So we have to do all ibadah that he did. Right. So give me an example. The Prophet ﷺ did something and it's sunnah for us to do it, but not wajib for us to do it. Tahajjud, for example, right? So many scholars, they say that it was fard for the Prophet ﷺ. It was obligatory for the Prophet ﷺ to pray tahajjud, but it was sunnah for us, right? Any sunnah prayers, for example, saying Bismillah when we eat, etc. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ did it and it's fard for us to do it. We have to do it. The Prophet ﷺ did it and it is sunnah for us to do it. The Prophet ﷺ did it and it's permissible for us to do it. The Prophet ﷺ did it, but it's permissible, merely permissible for us to do it. Eating, right? So unless we have a particular reason or a particular intention, it's merely permissible. The Prophet ate, and it's merely permissible, right? The Prophet ate rabbit. Do you have to eat rabbit? No. So the Prophet showed us that even the Prophet didn't do it. The Prophet didn't eat lizard. There was a big dob lizard, right? So the Prophet didn't eat it. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, is it because it's haram? He said, no, just I'm not used to it. So it is not. So the fact that he didn't do it, that doesn't tell us that, right? So the Prophet did it, and it tells it could be wajib. The Prophet did it, it could be sunnah. The Prophet did it, it could be permissible. The Prophet did it, and it could be offensive for us to do. Like what? Eating garlic? No, yeah. So oh yeah. So fasting, so eating garlic, not quite. The Prophet didn't do that. So I'm saying the Prophet did it, but it's offensive for us to do that. So eating garlic is not a good example. Yeah, so Azhar mentioned fasting every day. What he means is fasting every day without breaking his fast, right? So the Prophet ﷺ would do wisal. He would fast without breaking his fast. But he's told us not to do that, right? So the Prophet ﷺ did it, but it is offensive for us to do that. Urinating standing up, sleeping in janaba. There's certain things the Prophet ﷺ did intentionally to show us that it's not haram. Right. So for him, when he did it, it was wajib because it was part of his job as a prophet. But for us, if we do it, it's makruh. We're doing something bad that Allah doesn't want us to do. Okay. What about something that the Prophet ﷺ did and it's haram for us to do?
Marrying more than 4 at a time.
Exactly. Right. So that's of the khasa'is then. So the default then, that's of the unique things of the Prophet ﷺ. The default is when the Prophet ﷺ does something, it could either be obligatory, or it could be recommended, or it could be permissible, or it could be offensive, or it could also be haram, but they're not the default. So when somebody says the Prophet ﷺ did it, therefore it's sunnah, that is not accurate. That's a very loose principle, right? That's very loose. That's not accurate. That's not how we work in usul al-fiqh when we're actually analyzing the Quran and Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ did it and a whole bunch of criterion, therefore it's obligatory. A whole bunch of criterion, therefore it's Sunnah. A whole bunch of criterion, therefore it's permissible. A whole bunch of criterion, therefore it's offensive. A whole bunch of criterion, therefore it's permissible for him but sinful for us. Okay? So that's that. So when the Prophet ﷺ does something, right? And I don't mean to be rude. Obviously, astaghfirullah, if you say the Prophet does something, it doesn't mean much. It's not true. But the mere fact that the Prophet does something does not actually tell us that much. Because it could be obligatory, it could be recommended, it could be permissible, it could be makruh, and it could also be haram. So in reality, we need the Prophet did it, and we're going to find lots of other considerations as well, as opposed to khalas, here's a hadith, the Prophet did it, you should all do it. That's not a sound, that's oversimplification, right? Oversimplification. Okay, what about the other way around? The Prophet never did this, right? The Prophet never did this. Could it be haram? So let's think about something. The Prophet never did it, and if we did it, it would be sinful.
Riba.
The Prophet never committed riba, and if we did it, it would be haram. Okay, good. So lying, cheating, etc. The Prophet never did these things, and if we did it, it would be haram. Okay, something the Prophet never did, and if we did it, it would be offensive.
Shaving the beard.
Shaving the beard. Yes, but most scholars say it's haram. But yeah, arguably that's offensive. Okay. It's something the Prophet never did, but if we did it, it would be permissible. Just merely permissible, not recommended, not good or bad, just halal.
Driving a car, as you said.
Driving a car, watching TV, using a screen, using an iPhone, etc. Right? Certain things they just didn't have, right? It's just whatever things that they had, the different kind of stuff. Did he ride an elephant? I don't know. Right? Did he ever ride a cow? I don't know. So even things that are new or things that were at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but he just never did it. Right? Speaking Latin, did he ever speak Latin? I don't know if he spoke Latin. Okay, so it would be permissible. So we said haram, makruh, permissible. Something the Prophet ﷺ never did, but it'd be recommended for us to do.
Muharram 9th, fasting on Muharram 9th.
Fasting on the 9th of Muharram, yes. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ never did it, but he said, if I'm alive next year, I will do this. And he wasn't alive the next year. Anything else? What we're doing right now, did the Prophet ﷺ do this? Did the Prophet ﷺ read hadiths? The Prophet ﷺ did not read hadiths, right? He didn't go around saying, okay, where's the book of the things that I said last week? He never did that, right? And it's recommended, right? So there's countless good things you can do. The Prophet ﷺ never did, right? So if you say the Prophet ﷺ never did this, it's not relevant the Prophet ﷺ never did it. It's relevant the Prophet ﷺ never would have done it had he been in your situation. That's what's relevant. But when you say the Prophet ﷺ never did it, it could be haram, it could be makruh, it could be permissible, it could even be recommended, it could be obligatory. So something that is obligatory, the Prophet ﷺ never did it. So did the Prophet ﷺ learn fiqh?
No.
He was fiqh, right? Like he's continually receiving revelation. So he is the law and he's defining the law, right? So we have to learn fiqh. He didn't have to learn fiqh, right? Did he gather hadith and document hadith narrators and rank different hadith narrators and talk about mistakes that hadith narrators made? No, that's obligatory though. If you didn't do that, you wouldn't be able to know what hadith to trust and what not to trust. Did he document Arabic language? No, he just spoke Arabic language. That's it. He didn't document it. Did he talk about Arabic grammar and rules of Arabic grammar? No, this is all obligatory. If you didn't have it, you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Did he set up a youth, a Muslims youth group in his high school in Mountain House? No. Prophet was never there. There was no need for it. Right? Did he work on new curricula for Muslim schools? No. But these are all obligations or community obligations. The Prophet never did these things. Right? So when the Prophet doesn't do something, what does it tell us? It could be haram, it could be makruh, it could be mubah, permissible, it could be sunnah, recommended, or it could be wajib, right? So the lack of so you say the Prophet never did it, that doesn't really tell you that much either, right? It's the Prophet never did it, even though there was a reason to do it, right? Even though this was the case, or even though that was the case, right? So so you say the Prophet did it, therefore it is sunnah. That's a gross oversimplification. Or the Prophet never did it, therefore it's wrong. That's a gross oversimplification, right? It's not an accurate way of doing things. That's an example, right? That's an issue of debate among the ulama, but on certain details of it. But it's an example of that, right? So I'll just give an example. My son, may Allah increase him, he was making pancakes, okay? And the instructions said, add water. So what do you think he did? He added water. So my question is, how much water did you add? He's like, oh, I just added water, like an amount of water. It says add the water, so I added water. So he's not surprised by his action, right? He's like, it's pretty simple. Like it says add water or add the water. So I added water. Like, why is what I did strange or odd or inaccurate, right? For me, somebody who is 4 times his age, that's kind of obvious that when you're making a recipe and you put an indiscriminate amount of water in it, it won't work. Like that's not going to work. So for him, the error is not obvious. For somebody who is older, the every error is obvious, right? So this is what happens. The Instagram thing says this is haram. The Prophet never did it. It's like, oh yeah, makes sense to me. And it's like that's obviously not very accurate. Like, how much water did you add to the pancakes? I don't know. So then I don't know how it's going to work out. Similarly, what are the criterion? So when you have very loose criterion, right? And particularly if something is very emotive, follow the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ never did it, then therefore don't do it. Or the Prophet ﷺ did it, therefore you should do this, right? That's an oversimplification, and you end up doing things in a wrong way. So always be very careful of oversimplifications. What's wrong with the world? The white man. That's an oversimplification. Right? What's wrong with this, right? These are emotive jargon or emotive language that people use to play you, right? And so we have to be people of ilm, people of knowledge. It's like it's not that simple, right? You have to study, and so like, oh, it's not that simple, right? So be careful of emotive, oversimplified slogans and ideas and paradigms. We need very, very detailed, subtle things because things are actually very detailed and complex. Life is like that. Surgery, politics, technology, deen, right? That's why you have to have knowledge, right? One of the things we've been learning in this class is the difference between Imam Bukhari as an author of Sahih Bukhari and Imam Bukhari as an author of this book. He has different standards that he's using, right? Subtlety, right? See, that is it right or wrong? It's more a subtlety. So we have to have lots of subtle systems in our head. And when we're dealing with the deen, otherwise we'll end up destroying the deen. May Allah protect us. Does that make sense, inshallah? So I think we learned two big concepts today. One was the difference between the faqih and the muhaddith. The other one was what we just spoke about right now. Concept of the process of doing something or not doing something. What does that mean and what does it not mean? Okay, but the point of the hadith is the Prophet did not blame people directly. The Prophet ﷺ was very soft. And I just want to give an example, share something. May Allah forgive us all, and may Allah protect us from being harsh and criticizing and being cruel to our children and cruel to our students. May Allah protect us all and forgive us all. I remember I was about 20, maybe 19 or 20, and I was with one of my teachers, and my teacher's very, very gentle and soft. He told me off once in my life. Otherwise, he's very, very gentle and nice and soft. And I said, oh, the hadith is in Sunan an-Nisa'i with a kasra on the noon. Sunan an-Nisa'i. And so he smiled. He says, no, it's not Nisa'i, it's Nasa'i. Nisa'i means an obstetrician, right? Nisa'i means women, so a doctor of women, right? So it's not the Sunan of an obstetrician. It means Sunan of Nasa'i from Nasa in Iran. I remember that to this day. He did not laugh at me. He laughed at what it meant. He wasn't trying to belittle me, but the fact that he corrected me and smiled hurt me for a long time. Right? I've forgiven him, no issues whatsoever. But that's just me sharing that. What about somebody else who say, you're always dumb, you're always making mistakes, you always do this. You so-and-so did this. When you throw in the word you, when they throw in the word always, when you throw in someone's name, it always hurts more, right? So we should always try and avoid generalizations. You're always doing stupid things. Stop doing it. We should say things like, that's the silly thing to do, as opposed to you are always doing it. We should always try and avoid the word, the name, right? and we say, we shouldn't do this, these things shouldn't be done. What's wrong with some people who do things like this, as opposed to you and throwing in your name, right? Inshallah. Okay. And then 437, this last hadith. So it says, حدثنا حماد بن حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن مبارك قال حدثنا حماد بن زيد عن سلم علوي عن أنس قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قلما يواجه الرجل بشيء يكرهه فدخل عليه رجل وعليه أثر صفرة فلما قام قال لأصحابه لو غير أو نزع هذه الصفرة. Go ahead.
Said the Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, said, peace, rarely told a man something to his face which he disliked. One day a man came to him with a trace of yellowish scent on him. When he stood up, he said to his companions, if only he would change or remove this yellow.
So, generally speaking, 99% of the time, advice is not useful because people, by default, even if they're religious, even if they're humble, even, they have egos. Everybody has an ego. So you come up to me and say, Fareed, if you use this software instead of that software, by default, I will be offended and it will hurt me and it will turn out the wrong way. Right? If you said, Fareed, I think there's an error in your answer, by default, I will be offended and I'll be hurt. Right? So people say, oh, so-and-so is sensitive. Everybody is sensitive. Everybody is sensitive. Right? That is the default. So the Prophet ﷺ, he knows that everybody is sensitive. So the Prophet ﷺ rarely told people to their face. Some people he told to their face, right? Some people he told them to their face. But by default, the Prophet ﷺ would say, if so-and-so, it would be better if so-and-so did this. So the indirect, right? Indirectly telling people to do it. And there's a famous story of Hassan and Hussein. I don't know if it's true or not, but the story is true. Where Hassan and Hussein see an old man making wudu, right? And they're making wudu and he's not making wudu properly. So instead of two young kids or two young men going up to an old man and saying, hey, old man, you don't know the most basic thing that everybody knows about Islam. They said, oh, our elder, my brother and I were having a competition, who can make wudu best, right? So they indirectly showed him how to make wudu, right? You indirectly, right? So it's very rare to find a situation when you can tell somebody to their face, this is what's wrong with you, and it's useful. It's rare, right? 99% of the time, you do it indirectly through somebody else in an indirect way. You make a story about yourself, about somebody else, have them tell a story to somebody else and they learn from that story, right? There's a lot of things you got to do indirectly because most people are very sensitive. 99% of people are extremely sensitive, and they're sensitive to things that you don't think are a big deal, and they will be offended, and it won't be useful, right? So you have to be very careful. And there are other scenarios where somebody, for example, is just arrogant, right, and they're oppressing other people, and you have to tell it to their face in certain scenarios, right? But the point is, it should help them, as opposed to it's not going to help them. Okay, so we'll stop here. And the default as well should be private. You don't do it in front of people. You don't say, hey, I saw you smoking yesterday. Stop smoking. That's haram. Right? You try and privately say, bro, I know you have this problem. I know other people like that, etc. And then you help that person privately, not you by default, not publicly, and by default, not directly. So there's some people around this area that smoke. I know it's really bad, and here's a solution, and etc. May Allah forgive us all. Subhanallah, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu